Right. Okay, so I'll just get us started, but please feel free to stay unmuted and chime in as needed, as you wish. But anyway, this is a recorded conversation about building a cooperative studio. And this is Grisak, one of the worker owners, and George is also here, another worker owner. And we get a lot of inquiries about what it means to be a co-op and what our practices are. And so we thought it would be really useful to have this recording posted so that we could use it as a resource and reference. And so anyway, yeah, I'm Grisak, she or they. I live actually in Honolulu, Hawaii, but I lived in Detroit for 9 years and I helped start and run Iyengar Yoga Detroit. And if others want to introduce themselves, go ahead.
Hi, I'm George, everyone. I'm quite new as a teacher to Iyengar Yoga Detroit Collective. So I came in as 2019 as an apprentice through the apprenticeship program. And it's been 2 years now I've been teaching. Yeah, that's it. Currently, and have been living in Detroit for 20 years.
Great. My name is Amanda Marshall, and I am the executive director of One New Humanity Community Development Corporation in Hamtramck. We serve Hamtramck and then part of Detroit, but within the umbrella of One New Humanity is Sisterhood Fitness, which is our all women's gym. And that's where Katie comes in.
Yeah, I'm Katie, and I've been a volunteer and director at Sisterhood Fitness the last maybe 4 years. I've been in and out at Sisterhood Fitness, and I live in Hamtramck in Detroit.
So Katie was the person who informed me of Iyengar, and Sisterhood is currently run by volunteers. It's a all volunteer based organization. And we were just really fascinated with your model and really wanted to learn more about that.
All right, great. Now, I just want to make sure you all are familiar with, I'm putting our website into the chat, iyengaryogadetroit.com, because that explains a lot about who we are and what our values are, and gives a little overview of our cooperative model. So should I start with a little bit of history? So before Iyengar Yoga Detroit was formed in 2013, it was called Yoga Suite Center for Yoga Studies, and it was a sole proprietorship run by Michelle Pearson, who's one of longtime Hamtramck resident, and one of the co-owners of the beignet food truck that's in Eastern Market every week. And she became a certified Iyengar yoga teacher in the late 2000s. I think she said 2007 or something like that. And then she opened her studio downstairs from the apartment, the building that they were living in, and was running classes out of that space. Were you ever there, George?
Actually, I was not. No.
It was a very sweet little space, but it was small, and she needed to get out of that building. And so when I moved to Detroit in early 2013, as somebody who had already been teaching since 2001 and had opened 2 studios actually in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, she was very eager to collaborate, and we opened Iyengar Yoga Detroit together in 2013 in a space across the street from Yoga Suite, which was on Joseph Campo at the time. So this is in 2013. So we opened in 2013, but it was still a sole proprietorship under Michelle's name. I was the lead teacher, but she was the one doing all the paperwork, and it was the LLC was in her name. So then, all the while she was doing the beignet truck. So she was really only able to teach a few classes, and I was teaching the majority of the classes because I was teaching full time. So then in 2016, we left our first space, which was on the second floor on Joseph Compound, to a first floor space. We really wanted to be on a first floor space to be more accessible, and that's when George started coming to classes. And in 20, so I think it was in 2014 that we moved to the second space, our third space actually, on Joseph Campo. And then in 2016, Michelle really felt like she didn't have the energy to keep holding on to the studio as her own business, that it was just not feasible for her. And so, but then at the same time, the rest of us didn't feel like we could run a sole proprietorship either. So by that point, 2016, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think maybe 5 teachers, 4 or 5 teachers by that point. And so we decided that because nobody wanted to be the business owner, sole proprietor, that we would run it together. We would run it cooperatively. And so the cooperative model has been tweaked, has been modified over the years. But that was what inspired us, is like, we knew, oh my gosh, we have to stay open. We really believe in what we're doing. We really feel like it's something that the city needs, that the community needs. We all love teaching, we all love practicing, we all love studying Iyengar yoga. And we're the only Iyengar yoga center in Detroit. And so we knew it was imperative that we stay open. And so we decided to run it as a collective. Now, the reason why that came about so organically is because we were already all friends. And most of us were already very much a part of the social justice movement. So we were used to thinking in these frameworks. Most of us had experience living in cooperative houses, working on cooperative projects. We belonged to other co-ops. So it was like a no-brainer, to become a co-op. It was part of our lifestyles already for most of us. So anyway, that's how it came about. Do you have any questions so far?
For me, that just really resonates, that you knew it needed to continue going on and needed a different path forward because no one wanted to be sole proprietor. I think I don't have any questions yet. I'm sure they'll come.
Anything you want to add, Katie or Amanda? Yeah, chime in.
No, just adding to what Katie said, where Sisterhood is kind of in a similar position, just in the sense of we have a team. No one wants to necessarily be the one lead person. So trying to determine that path forward. I mean, I guess I'm very interested in like, I mean, I can ask some of the specific questions that we came up with, but like how it works with, you go and contribute by teaching a class, and then, kind of like what the actual economics of it is.
Is Sisterhood Fitness a 501c3?
Yes.
Well, that's a boon. And we've thought about applying for 501c3. The studio that I ran in Milwaukee for 10 years is a 501c3. And we thought about whether we should become one, and we decided that it wasn't worth all the paperwork. But we are an LC3, a low profit limited liability corporation. So which is doesn't have the tax benefits, but it's similar in structure. Now as far as like the model that we are using, our current structure, it's kind of evolved. So maybe I'll ask George to describe the model that our current structure.
So, well, that's broken down into committees. So there's, I believe, there's 7 committees. We have the steering committee, which is the main committee, which is like the worker owner committee, which is comprised of mainly teachers, the office manager. Sometimes we will have a student interested. And then we have like a financial committee, which is comprised of maybe 2 or 3 people. So there's not very many people in each committee. We also have a teacher committee, which I think they're kind of growing and evolving. There's organic shapes to each one. They're all kind of shaped quite differently. Apprenticeship committee, which is comprised of the apprentices. So we have an apprentice program. We said the finance site committee, which is, so each committee is responsible for this, entity, right? So the site, so then you have a group of people, which are mainly the teachers and some students here and there, which contribute to cleaning processes that are responsible then to keep the site organized, tidy. Let's see what else is there. Finance, communications committee.
Community partnership.
Yep, partnerships. So, and they're quite new within the last 2 years, I believe, since we've kind of picked them up and started to get them off the ground and moving along. And that, I mean, as Gwisak was mentioning, how has been an organic process. And, having the committees isn't so much an organic process, but I think what it is, it's like this container. And the organic process might need a container. But now what I'm starting to observe is that within each committee, there needs to be some sort of organic process. So something that's in place that can be easy and accessible for folks to just tap into. Like, I'm starting to observe, how can the site committee be more efficient? Because I'm one of the main persons in the site committee. How can it be more efficient? How can it become organic? And I believe that was one of the questions, is like, how has this model changed, or like, how can it be improved? I think you need the container, you need the committees. Whatever committees that would benefit Sisterhood is based on the needs of Sisterhood. Like, the committees we have are based on the needs of Iyengar Yoga Detroit Collective. So, for example, then you have communications, which involves like a lot of the social media work, which we have a platform there, which is Facebook, or whether it is any social media program that is used as an outlet, that already is some sort of facilitates whatever we want to communicate. So that has a process already. Does that make sense? Is that good?
Yeah.
Anything to add, Lisa?
Amanda, you had a question?
Is there overlap on the committees? Like, George, do you belong to more than one, or is each person just really supposed to put all their energy in? Okay.
Yeah,
It's really up to anybody, it's up to each person.
Okay.
But yeah, I think most people serve on at least a couple of committees.
And then within each committee, is there like one person driving it, or is there really equal buy-in? Like, maybe even who organizes, George, your site committee? Like, do you have a leader for that?
The organization needs to be an organic process. And I think that's what I'm starting to discover, is how can say the cleaning of the place, or the cleaning of the props, like, how can we have an organic process? There's just something that, like, for example, we have a student that has one day a week that cleans the platform where all the plants are and feeds the plants, right? So I'm not really in charge, and no one is really in charge. It's just like, for example, the financial committee, Aaron has most responsibility. And I would say in site, I do have a large responsibility, because I'm there often. I do want to make sure that it is tidied up, because I predominantly function under the site committee, where Aaron really functions under the financial committee, and I would like to lift less of a burden off of Aaron. You know, I can see that, well, Aaron puts in this time doing the financial work. How can I contribute more into the site work? And now that I have more free time right now, currently in this last week, I'm starting to see how can I design an organic process to structure the site in a way that students can contribute without any kind of confusion, where there's something in place already, kind of, you know, or it's like you have a task, one person does a task. Like one person picks up the blankets after class while the other person picks up all the bricks, and the other person picks up the chairs, right? So how can we have even more of a functionality within each site?
So those are the students that are contributing to picking up also. Okay, gotcha. So there's a,
And
do you state that kind of level of expectation when someone signs up for classes? Like, how do you communicate that to, or is it just kind of like in the water where like people kind of pick up like, okay, I'm supposed to contribute here, and they do?
Well,
yeah,
everybody cleans up after class. That's just a normal thing in all Iyengar classes. It doesn't need to be announced. Everybody does that. But I think that in terms of like the culture of Iyengar Yoga Detroit, that needs to be taught. That needs to be taught, discussed, promoted. It needs to be very clear. So we have a framed poster of our mission. We have it on the first page of our website. We put it on a lot of media. And so you have to, and it took us a lot of time to write up a mission statement, and to come up with our values. We're part of the Healing Justice movement. That's on our website also. The Healing Justice movement is a social justice framework for healers and for healing industries, healing modalities. And so there's a lot of support around us in terms of like creating the language, creating the values, creating the structures. But that needs to be, it's all part of the culture. And so we as a center, we're continually emphasizing that we're collective, we're a cooperative, and that we depend on our students and our participants, and so we're, so it needs to be like continual recruitment, and I don't even want to say recruitment, but community building, relationship building, friendship building. So it's not like odious, and it's not a burden, but it's friendship, and it's fun. We have potlucks, we have clothing swaps, we have classes at the park in the summer, to have like fun things, birthday parties. We also host gatherings for other groups, so they use our space. And we've had a policy that if any teacher or worker owner wants to host an event and it's a free event, then we're not going to charge rent. We do charge rent for like other classes, like a Tai Chi class and things like that. But if it's a free social event, then more the merrier. As far as the way the committees are structured, I think in an ideal world, each committee would have like a chair and regular meetings. But the fact of the matter is, everybody's super busy, and they're more like, in our case currently, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, George, it's more like ad hoc committees. They meet as needed, or when an issue comes up, or they meet by email. So it's not necessarily like the finance committee has a meeting every month, site committee has a meeting every month. It's not necessarily like that. It's more like as the needs arise, or as questions arise, and then we, but a lot of it, so then the steering committee is like the decision-making body. And the hope was that each committee would send somebody to the steering committee every month. But because it's a lot of the same people, you know, the same, I would say like 6 to 8 people, you know, doing most of the work, then it's, then, you know, we just end up wearing a lot of hats. But 6 to 8 is great. I mean, just think about like Margaret Mead and, you know, anything, every significant movement has just been a handful of people. So if you have like 6 to even, I would say 5 to 7 people, 5 to 7 people who are committed, interested, and able to put in some time, you can run a center. You can absolutely run a center. We have 2 hired positions. One is a part-time office manager. And by part-time, we're saying 2 to 4 hours a week. That's it. We have a part-time office manager, and we're just about to hire a part-time bookkeeper. Those are our only paid positions. Everything else is unpaid. Now, we do have we do offer, and we have a hope, we have an aspiration of paying our worker owners. And so we started off, if you would like to be paid, you know, we can start off at $5 an hour, but our hope is to go up to $20 an hour. But nobody has really requested that, really, because I think everybody, you know, they just feel like they would rather contribute the time. So anyway, do you think that's accurate, George?
Yeah, that's very accurate. That's why I think, you know, because of the meetings, people don't want to really show up to meetings unless like there is that necessity to have a meeting. And that's why I was thinking if there is something like, or an organic process in place. I know it sounds very vague, but I know it's definitely like not vague for the site, is like, how can you keep, like, for example, the cleaning of props, how can you have a system? You know, how can each committee have a system in ways that like maybe a meeting is not even necessary unless it's absolutely essential. That it's like this gets done, this gets like I want to find, okay, Beata cleans and waters the plants. Now who can be responsible for this on this day? Right. And not all the students are going to be interested in participating. So I know that there's a few students interested in doing things in a casual way, but if there's a commitment, even better when it becomes a weekly thing.
I think, you know, our practice, our structure is explicitly anti-capitalist. So like in a capitalist commercial yoga studio, you walk in, everything is clean and beautiful, you pay a certain amount, and the expectation is because you're paying the certain amount, then, you know, there's a water, you know, dispenser, and there's a nice dressing room. You know, that's the expectation, that's the trade-off. That's not how we run. You know, the way we run is okay, well, first of all our teachers are certified, all our teachers are extremely well trained and always doing continuing education. So the quality of teaching is always great no matter what. But really we try to educate people and create a culture of like, this is, if you see something that needs to be done, then do it, or suggest it to somebody. You know, if you have an idea for something, please talk to your teacher about it, you know, bring it up with other students. And so it's very much an environment of like, we're creating this together, and you have a say in this, you know. And so for instance, our pricing structure, so the way we've gotten by is we still charge people for classes. So that's where our income comes from. We still charge people for classes, but it's a sliding scale. But we have like really taught our community that if you have more, please give more. And if you have less, then don't feel bad, just come and give less. It's totally cool. It's totally fine. You don't have to ask permission. You don't have to fill out a form. You don't have to show paperwork. You don't have to apply for a scholarship. Just pay what you can. That's been our practice since the beginning. And but this feeling, this climate of interdependence is really, I always say that the opposite of capitalism is relationships. When you don't have relationships, you have to pay for everything. When you have relationships, then you're building interdependence, and you're building just reciprocity, and just really community. It's just really community. So yeah, Iyengar Yoga Detroit Collective, I think, is effective because we have prioritized community building. And so then if the community is not coalescing, it doesn't mean everybody's the same or anything like that, but if the community is not showing up, then we have to ask ourselves, why is that? And what can we do to cultivate community?
I assume you've encountered that then, because that's kind of my next question is some of the obstacles you faced, or like when that community isn't happening, like how you assess that and kind of move forward.
Definitely. So for instance, Iyengar Yoga in the United States is very much known. And if you look around the nation, even like Ann Arbor, Iyengar Yoga is definitely known as an upper middle class elitist practice. And they're in well-to-do neighborhoods, and Ann Arbor is the perfect, example. Like there are 3 Iyengar Yoga studios in Ann Arbor, and they've been there for decades, and so and as you know, Ann Arbor is like a completely different demographic than Detroit and Hamtramck. And so because Iyengar Yoga has this reputation in other parts of the country, we had to be really intentional about that's not how we're going to come across. We're not going to come across as elitist. We're not going to come across as predominantly white. We're not going to come across as upper middle class. So being in Hamtramck, which is a working class neighborhood, and with a high poverty rate, and being in a community of color, being in a community of immigrants, we wanted our faculty to reflect that. And so in order to recruit more teachers of color, first of all, we've always been predominantly teachers of color, which is very incredibly unusual. Michelle was one of the only Black yoga studio owners, in the nation. And but we like our student body was not reflecting the demographic of our neighborhood. And so we've worked really hard at changing that demographic. And so one of the ways that we did it is we have a BIPOC apprenticeship program. And so now that's a whole other matter. That's a whole other conversation. And we could go into depth about that, but it might not apply to you. But anyway, the long and short of it is that we created a program and we raised money for it to pay our apprentices of color. So we completely flipped the teacher training yoga industry, commercial yoga industry model, where you pay, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $10,000, whatever, to become certified as a yoga teacher. We flipped that. We turned that on its ear and said, no, we'll pay you. We'll pay you. We're going to give you free classes, and then we're going to give you a stipend to help pay for transportation, childcare, or whatever else you may need in order to do this program. And so, and it's totally worth it because it's community building. It's legacy building. We have to think long-term, not short-term. And so that's what been one way. And then yeah, to do partnerships, you know, like with neighborhood organizations, with the schools. What else have we done, George? I'm
Well,
once.
the Minute Clinic with the farm, the Keep Growing Detroit classes. We just did the No Way Back class with the the Memorial Weekend thing. And then now I'm becoming involved with the Detroit Hamtramck Coalition for advancing healthy environments, just, you know, trying to bridge gaps, create bridges. Yeah.
Yeah, so building partnerships, you know,
Yeah.
collaborations. We don't use the term outreach. We use the term collaboration.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a top-down thing. It's, can we partner? Can we be friends? Can we come up with something together? You know, I really feel like, and that is one uh, potential pitfall of the nonprofit industrial complex, right? This sort of like the funder and then the organization and then it is trickle down kind of thing. And we've tried to actually make everything horizontal instead.
Yeah, as I'm listening, I'm like, oh, we've got some culture rebuilding, deconstructing and rebuilding to do. As I'm hearing about this model, and you know, my thought has been I'd love to have a more collaborative approach, but I think that involves deconstructing some things that have been in place for the last 5 or 6 years, if we want to move that route. Yeah.
Are you able to name any other like particular obstacles? Not that I want to focus on the negative, but what kind of maybe hurdles you've needed to, any additional ones to figure out, other than like really getting the culture emphasized and having people buy in?
Well, I mean, it's challenging to think outside of the box, to be someone that walks in the door. So it's quite avant-garde, you know? And I think anything that's avant-garde, it can be a little bit, you know, it can be, there's a hesitancy potentially because there's an unfamiliarity.
Yeah.
So you have to build relationships this way, right? It's a building process. It's not like an extractive process where someone comes in, takes something and leaves. So it's an embodiment process walking in the door, whether or not you've even taken class already, because you have to learn something new. You know, this is an extremely unfamiliar type of platform, you know, or organization, you know, to the entire yoga industry, that I'm aware of. And I'm sure and I did research, there's one collective in Marquette, because I was in Marquette once, and I like to research yoga studios in all the cities I'm in or wherever I go. And I was in Marquette, and there was a collective, and I don't know how they're formed, but it's there. I'm sure there's things going on, but if they're community gift based, whether or not, you know, that's quite new, and I think that could be a growing thing as well, potentially, because I know there's other studios that are continuing with the idea of community gift. So there's, you know, different rates then. And that's difficult, like coming from a consumerist culture, a capitalist culture, to say, oh, well, I only have to pay this much. But if you have money in your pocket and you can afford to pay more, then those that cannot pay more are able to pay less, and things balance themselves out. This is something that is an obstacle, right? It's not that it's an obstacle, it's just that's not really easy for it to be digestible in the very beginning approach interaction. It takes a moment.
Meiko, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, my name is Meiko. I am Friesark's daughter and one of the teachers at the studio. and I'm happy to join. Sorry I'm late. We were selling food at a farmer's market.
Nice to meet you. Thanks for jumping
Good to meet
on.
you. Yeah.
I
Go
was
ahead.
just thinking with, and I don't want to, if Guisak, if you want to take this in a different direction, that's fine. I was thinking about, our demographics is a little different in the sense that we're female only, so that's fine. But I was thinking about a lot of the women that come are new, they're immigrants, and I feel like culture just feels like an additional barrier. Trying to welcome. I don't know, Katie, do you have any other thoughts on that? Like I've been listening and trying to think of how it might translate for us, but I feel like what's really attractive to me is really creating the community aspect is what is, I think, most exciting.
Yeah, I mean, just the little bit I know about Sisterhood Fitness, it sounds like you need to, really put people who represent the community up front. And they need to be the ones who are most visible and the ones who are, most um, uh, active in the space. And like, um, uh, let's say Hamtramck is primarily Yemeni and Bangladeshi, and so if you're not from those communities, you can still support and do work on like infrastructure, website, and funding and stuff like that. But how do you put people from the community in the most hands-on roles? I think that would be a big accomplishment, and that would go a long way.
Yeah. We have specifically wanted to engage the members in like the reciprocity of working at the welcome desk. I mean, we've worked with some of them, trying to train them to teach classes also. But a lot of them would rather pay a membership fee than come in and bring, contribute with their time. And we haven't exactly gotten to the bottom of why, but that's been a hurdle for us in wanting more buy-in.
Is language ever an issue?
Yeah, usually we can get along. There's if someone doesn't speak English, so there's another woman there that would, be bilingual and be able to help. But yeah, it is a barrier sometimes.
Um, what about childcare?
We have not been able to consistently offer childcare. We haven't been able to find volunteers to fill that ongoing.
What about transportation?
We are located in like the downtown district of Hamtramck, so it's pretty walkable. We know that a lot of women don't drive, so of course, in warmer weather, nicer weather, it's much more well attended. And then we have a drop off in the winter, but we don't provide any transportation.
Just a little story, at one point, I met somebody at now it's closed, but the Hamtramck Health Center, that was next to the DMV on Joseph Campo, near the former, well, now it's Al Haramain, but, and I met somebody there who was really excited that I was an Iyengar yoga teacher. And so we started communicating, and we started brainstorming. And we started a class, and it was just for Muslim women. And it was a private class so that they could take off their head coverings. And we had one class. They loved it. But then we never could get them to come back. One class was enough for them. And what my collaborator told me is that they needed more incentive. Like snacks and childcare wasn't enough incentive. She said, can you do gift cards? And at first I was like, what? Are you crazy? We're already giving them a free class and giving them snacks and offering childcare. But now, years later, I'm like, damn, we should have done gift cards. Why not? Why not? Like when I turned off my capitalist brain and we dreamed up this paid BIPOC apprenticeship program and it was so successful, now I'm thinking, yeah, we should give them incentives for coming. I mean, it's huge. It's huge. They're probably the first person in their generation, to do something like this for themselves, for their bodies, for their own health, away from their kids, away from their families, away from their partners. It's huge. And so give them, gift bags, raffles, whatever, anything. But I feel like, really people need encouragement. People who didn't grow up with this as part of their culture, they need a hell of a lot of encouragement. And this is also reparations. It's reparations for the colonial and legacy that we've all been under, the thumb of colonialization. And then also, I will just say one thing that has been really helpful to us as a yoga center is that we think of this as practicing yogic values. So we don't think of yogic values as just like, oh, nonviolence, I don't eat meat. No, we think of it as changing systems that are oppressive. It's much more than just like, oh, we're going to chant Om and be peaceful. Much more than that.
Do you think that, given the demographic that we're working with, like women that we're, because they do need more encouragement, that I don't know how to ask, the people who are more bought in are the teachers, like where it is still more of like a traditional service model where we're bringing lots of encouragement / services to the women, but the community piece that is similar to Iyengar Detroit is the volunteers that teach the classes. Like, do you see them kind of separately, or am I misreading?
Teachers get paid. We don't have any volunteer teachers.
Okay, all the teachers get paid. Okay. Gotcha. Katie, have you thought of any additional questions? Sorry, I accidentally hit mute. I think you've answered a lot of what we had just through the conversation.
I think the main obstacle, the main challenge has been always to get more people involved. And that's the case for every organization, right? I don't know of any organization they're like, oh, we have too many volunteers, and so it's really, people are busy, and people, like they get involved, they're really excited, and then they drop out and we don't see them for 6 months. And then, they have babies, it's just like so many things. And so, but I think that if you, like I said, if you have a handful, that's really enough. But you were going to say, George?
No, I think it's also like that obstacle is that we're like that whole colonialist, like we're trained to extract and not, even though we are busy, but sometimes like, there's always, you can find time, and I know like as a like someone that has gone through this process of, embodying something beyond this capitalist system, is in the beginning, I didn't understand the value of how I can contribute to embody something that was outside of just taking something. That's huge, because then once you understand the process of building partnerships and that togetherness, that's part of it, it's a real fulfilling and rewarding feeling. I mean, I kind of come from a background of contracting, like labor work. So working with labor and other folks that are working side by side. And I know that like that's a collective process. You really got to work together with folks. And I know it can be very rewarding, and it's not extractive. So I already had an artist background, but also labor background with like working with my hands. So it was quite easy for me to make the transition. Plus, I've always been avoiding mainstream, you know, corporate America my whole life. So, but I think that's a huge, yeah.
George, I really appreciate you sharing that, because it just reminds me that for most of us, it will be a process. Like we need to be willing, but it's not going to come naturally. And so to keep pressing in to that, to keep pressing into how do we turn things on their head. Yeah, I think what is also coming to the forefront is the apprentice program, right? And the idea of paying someone to learn because it's something new, it's something different. Like that's an incentive. That would be huge. And so it's not just offering the opportunity and telling people that they can do it, but saying you can do it and we're going to back you with our money. And even if you can't do it, we're going to back you with our money until you prove to us that you cannot do it. But we think you can.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, you know, capitalism teaches us that everything is like transactional, tit for tat. I give this, you get that. And but instead, if we shake off that model and we just think, so for instance, not all our apprentices are going to go on to become certified and to teach at Iyengar Yoga Detroit. But that's okay. You know, it's not like we have to like earn back. It's not like they owe us. You know, it's that we're putting out this really great opportunity, this education out into the world, and they'll take it or not. They'll take however much they're able to handle and then digest it, and it will be what it'll be. You know, it's not like, oh well, we gave you 3 years of free classes, now you have to do that for us. No, that's a turnoff. That's a turnoff, and that's capitalism brainwashing. So it's more like we're enriching each other. You're enriching our community by being part of our community. We're enriching your life by providing these resources, and then in we will enrich each other in new ways. You know, we don't know what kind of fruit will be born in years and generations to come. So I think that we have to really kind of stop thinking in that manner. And because really, like, the things that are most important cannot be quantified. There's no dollar amount, right? There's no dollar amount on art. There's no dollar amount on healing. There's no dollar amount on community. So so we have to really I think that's what makes our community, what makes any community succeed. And you know, just speaking for myself, I don't distinguish. I do paid work and I do unpaid work, but they're equally important to me. I don't ascribe to this capitalist notion of volunteerism, which is like, oh, something you do in your spare time as like a charity to the world. No, it's paid work and unpaid work are equally valuable. I have to do some paid work in order to keep a roof over my head, but the unpaid work is equally important. You know, and the quote unquote payoff for unpaid work is it's intangible. It's intangible, and it's really like for generations to come.
I mean, I feel inspired to come be a part of the community. I think that that's what has caught my attention the most, is just the amount of community there. Like, you're not just going and doing your thing, you're contributing and you're receiving. And I don't know. I just really admire this. I feel inspired more than just informed. I feel inspired by this model a lot. So, I mean, I feel like you answered most of our questions unless any other ones came up. Do you have any, I don't know what, like, if someone were, I mean, we kind of have an established thing that we need to like think about, but if someone were starting like a new collaborative fitness center, like what would be like your first initial key startup suggestions?
Assemble your team and figure out like what each person, what their particular passions are, what their particular passions and skills are. One person might be just really good at talking to people. One person might be really good at bookkeeping, or just figure out where people's passions lie, and then do team building. It's so funny because I went to a webinar a couple weeks ago, and they were saying, okay, now we're going to practice social art, and this is how we're going to do it, and we're going to put you in pairs, and then these are the questions that you'll each take 3 minutes to answer these questions. And it was so funny because like this is what we just like should be doing as humans, but now we have to like label it and structure it and have a timer, and it's funny, but it's not funny because we have lost a lot of these opportunities to just like be in community with each other, and just like get to know each other, and be interested in each other and help each other out, share food, just like basic stuff that used to be, it seems like it should be just part of the human experience, but for a lot of communities, it's not.
Yeah.
So I think just really like building relationships, like becoming friends. And, at Iyengar Yoga Detroit, we're pretty much all friends. It's not hierarchical.
Yeah. Well, I think you've given us a lot to evaluate.
May, could you
And
have anything you want to add?
yeah.
I mean, I did look at the questions. I missed a lot of the beginning of the conversation, so I don't feel like I have a lot to add. I am curious, like if your space is currently open and if we can visit, and where exactly you're located.
Yeah, that's something I can follow up with via email with our address and all of our information. We offer classes Monday through Thursday, and because it's volunteer based, it's kind of at their availability. So we kind of have some base hours, but they do vary a little bit. But we're right across from Olaman on Joseph Campau. And yeah, we'd love it if you came and visited. I was actually thinking the way Guisak was speaking earlier about partnerships. I'm like, well, what kind of partnerships?
Amanda.
Yes.
Oh, wait. I didn't hear that. Did others catch that? Because Amanda, I can't hear you.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Oh, I can hear you now.
I
Okay.
can hear you. Yeah.
I was
my internet, sorry.
No worries. I was just saying, I would really love to explore partnerships and what that might look like. And anyone's welcome to come visit at Sisterhood. I'll share that information via email afterwards about our open hours and location.
Wait, so you're next to like that furniture store?
Yes.
Or the place that used to be a grocery store and then it became a furniture store?
Yep. So there's a furniture store and then like a little mobile store, and then we're right next to them. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Let me ask you, Amanda and Katie, why are your teachers unpaid?
Um, Katie, if you have like the kind of history of it, might be helpful.
Yeah, so it did start out with 2 immigrant women and 2 US born women cooperatively wanting to have a space for women to exercise. And so I think just originally there was no funding, and it was very grassroots. And funding has always been something difficult for us to maintain. So we've done some fundraising for a director, for renting, like for rent, for equipment. And then, you know, at this point, we charge a small fee for members to come and exercise, but it's just not ever become sustainable, even with fundraising, grants, etc. So part of me is wondering if, you know, it's kind of potentially been boxed in due to just a variety of different reasons. But yeah, we just haven't had the sustainability to pay instructors. Yeah.
Yeah, so I would think that that would be a priority, to raise enough funds to be able to support your instructors.
Did you have to do some initial fundraising at the beginning? I know you said for the apprenticeship program you did, but did you need to like have startup money in the beginning?
No, because it was a for-profit center when Michelle was running it. There wasn't a lot of money, but because Iyengar yoga is kind of, you know, a known commodity, people were used to paying for classes. And so the new part was, you know, creating the sliding scale model, but people were used to paying for classes, and there was, you know, like there was a small but committed group of students who financially supported the classes. So we didn't have startup money, but we always had, you know, we always had steady students, some steady, enough steady students to maintain an income. And so yeah, that was enough to pay rent, you know. And pre-pandemic, we were paying our teachers well above market rate, actually. We were paying them $10 a head. Whereas market rate was more like $5 a head. But we wanted to do that because we really wanted to prioritize the instructors. And then during the pandemic, all the teachers agreed to be paid a flat rate of $30 a class. Because there was so much uncertainty at the beginning of the pandemic, you know, and we just didn't know how many people would be coming online, you know, how many classes we'd be able to offer, what people would be willing to pay for an online class. There was just so much uncertainty. So all the teachers agreed to accept a flat rate of $30 per class. And then we've recently gone back up a little bit, and we're in discussion again about raising teacher rates. But currently we're doing a flat rate model and not a per head model, because students come for free or for low cost.
Is your schedule based on when your instructors want to hold their classes, or do you like we're open these hours and then fill it with your instructors? Do you know what I mean? Does that question make sense?
The way we structured it is that we have time slots so that our students can better remember, you know, when the classes are. So we have a 7:30 a.m. time slot, a 9 a.m. time slot, 5:15 p.m. and a 6:30 p.m. time slot. So we have like time slots that we fill.
Okay.
But not all the time slots are filled, and but yeah, we try to have like set times so that if you're a student, you're like, oh, okay, Mako's teaching the 5:15 p.m. class tonight. Oh, George is teaching the 5:15 class tomorrow night. So that people have some like have the rhythm of the week memorized and in their bodies.
So if you have, a 9 a.m. class, but you haven't filled it with an instructor, do you just
We don't
cancel?
have a class, yeah, that we can't do.
Okay, and
Yeah, we rework the schedule basically every season. So we'll like right now we're looking at, okay, what does fall look like? What does winter look like? And then we do like a quarterly check-in with all the teachers, and then also make sure that those times match when students are actually coming. So every 3 months we're like, well, this class, everyone wanted this time, but no one's actually showing up. So should we cancel this class? So it's like a constant reevaluation, but it's really based off of like time slots that we've already established make sense in terms of like structuring the calendar, and then also what time do people generally get off work. So we have a 5:15, knowing that, okay, some folks get off at 5 and maybe they can make it by 5:15, and we have a 6:30, that's like our latest time slot. We know that class will be over by 8 o'clock, right? So, but those are constantly being readjusted based on availability of both students and teachers.
and that's your steering committee that makes those decisions?
It's the steering committee with the input of the teachers.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. That's helpful. Well, I know we're at an hour that you guys said that you'd be able to give us of your time. I'm really grateful for you just making yourselves available to answer our questions. Katie, did you have any final thoughts or questions?
No, I just agree with Amanda. This was very wonderful to hear how it has organically moved and how it really is so collaborative. And yeah, it's something I really want to explore with Sisterhood, and like Amanda said, even partnership with Iyengar Yoga Detroit as well. So thank you.
Okay, great. Yeah, good to meet you, and yeah, take good care.
All right, thanks so much.
I'll be following up with our information so we can talk about
Oh,
partnership.
perfect. Yeah, great.
Okay,
Cool.
awesome. Thank you so much.
Bye.